is the brand new center axis from Waterworks-Lamson. It's a fully integrated rod, very unique, very interesting. Let's talk about it. So I'm here with Ryan from Waterworks. Ryan, this rod is amazing.
A little unusual, yeah.
We might have seen one in the past perhaps, but
yes.
I don't think it's been quite like this.
Right. So this is an idea that we had 20 years ago when we first came into fly fishing. And some of the audience out there might remember a Sage center axis in which the reel was brought up into alignment with the center axis of the rod. That is us. That was our idea and licensed to Sage back at that time, almost 20 years ago.
It looks like you've been working on the idea though.
We've been working on the idea all the time since. Let me express what's going on here by showing you an exaggeration of the opposite, and it'll be easier to understand why this makes sense. This is obviously a ridiculous example in which we've exaggerated the distance of the reel from the rod, but it's important to understand the dynamic that the reel has on the rod when you're casting. The reel is always a heavier object, and it sits out here in space to some degree or another. We've exaggerated it for the illustration.
Yeah, so this is not your normal reel seat, right?
This is not what we bring into market, by the way. But it gives you an idea here. So in your mind's eye, cast this, and you'll see the kind of forces that it's putting on the rod. It's
Gotcha.
a heavier object, and it's leveraged out in space. Now, obviously, normally it's here, so it's a matter of difference in degree, but the dynamic is the same. It's the heavier object, it's sitting out here in space. So when you're casting, a surprising amount of what's registering in your brain and in your hand is the momentum of that reel as it moves through space.
Gotcha.
That momentum of the reel is noise that gets in the way of your feeling what's happening between the line and the rod.
So you're getting disturbance going on at the butt end of the rod from the mass of the reel, basically.
Right.
Meanwhile, the tip's doing its own thing at the other end.
Right. The objective in fly casting is to understand where the line is, where the rod is relative to the line, the timing, loading, all of that. The noise that the reel creates, or the forces that are created by having that mass out here leveraged, gets in your way of feeling that.
Yeah.
So the whole idea with center axis is to take that mass, delever it, move it back here to the center, or as close to the center axis of the rod as possible. And this is the maximum that you can do with a comfortable casting grip. Doesn't get in the way of your wrist or your arm. And the difference that this makes when you're casting versus a standard seat, standard foot is surprising. That noise is much reduced, that force is much reduced, and so what you're left with is the feeling of the rod and the line, which is exactly what you want.
Gotcha.
You don't want to be feeling the reel when you're casting, you want to feel the rod and the line.
So obviously that's the reel element, which I imagine is easy to focus on because it's centered, which is unusual.
Right.
But tell us about the rod and what you put into that.
The rod is our design. It's a medium fast action rod. This is a 5-weight, and it's a good fishing tool. It's not designed to be solely good at casting distance. It's a good all-round casting rod. It's a good fishing tool.
Action?
Medium fast.
Right.
Medium fast action.
Yep.
So very versatile, and sky camo finish. So again, camouflaged against the background of the sky. No flash, kind of a matte finish. So that's what's going on with the rod. The attachment mechanism, easily removed. This is an O-ring lock. You just push the two parts apart.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It's a stiletto type fixture. We've got 2 pins that line up with 2 holes in the back of the rod, and press them together. And
Very
it's secure and it's waterproof, that connection. The reel itself is a Lightspeed center axis. Many people are familiar with Lightspeed. It's a very lightweight reel. It's been around a long time. It has a great reputation. So we're using Lightspeed on the center axis rod.
This is definitely one of the most innovative rod and reel setups we've seen at the show.
Let me just say one last thing before we close. Whatever you think about this, however it hits you, first impressions, set that aside and just cast it. It's just physics, and you'll understand what's happening when you put it in your hand and you're casting it.
Definitely need to try this rod. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
Cheers.
All right.